Welcome back to making the kilt from a double width piece of cloth, part 3, and as usual, motion sickness alert. Right, here we are. I've reached the halfway point. This kilt is 25 pleats. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12. What I do when I get to the middle point is I mark the middle pleat. Okay, I did that wrong. Or at least I didn't do it the way I usually do it, which is X marks. The reason why I do that, a couple of reasons. It's sort of a morale thing while I'm sewing the second half, because I can just glance and see what progress I'm making as opposed to stopping and counting again. So it saves a bit of time. It's a bit of a morale thing. Also, when we have the forward fitting, the first trial fitting, and also subsequent fittings, when that is there, I can tell at a glance that whether or not the middle pleat is in fact dead center in the small of the back. So having reached the halfway point, I take a moment and I measure my progress, or I measure my accuracy in my progress. So there's the middle of the center pleat, and again, remember the radius, or sorry, the taper is complete top to bottom, so I'm measuring at the top of the kilt rather than down, although I could measure it equally well where the buckle is there, 2 inches down. Now, that comes out as, right there, comes out as just a nudge over 18 inches, let's say 18 and a quarter. So over 12 pleats, I've added a 1/4 inch. And as careful as I might be, just by, again, remember I've been checking with each pleat, I check my little gauge, but I'm a 1/4 inch over at the waist. That isn't critical, because I can easily make up for that by a minute variation in the width of the front apron, or both aprons actually, and also we have that inch or so of fringe on the edge. But what it tells me is, well, the lesson that it tells me is I'm going to be just that little bit careful going forward, so that by the end of ideally, I'm not going to go back and re-sew this, but we are a 1/4 inch over. Let's not be 1/2 inch over by the time we get to the end. So I'm going to take that as a warning. I'm going to be a little more cautious in measuring my pleat widths. And the same thing at the hip. I am, I'm like 1.5 inches over there. It's quite a bit less critical down at the hip, because we want that bit of ease. But again, I'm going to be a great deal more careful in checking my pleat widths, because that is the result of an accumulation of chalk lines. And as you can see, those chalk lines are less than 1/16 of an inch. Right? It looks like 1/3 of an 1/8 of an inch. So you do your sums, but you can see how that tiny little bit of error builds up. But still, I'm not heartbroken about that yet. Let's see how the final fitting, or sorry, the trial fitting shows how greatly that's an issue, because I may have to go back and do it again. We never pass a fail. Okay, so this again is the middle pleat. Looking inside, there's our hidden seam. And that hidden seam was, you could feel it through one layer of cloth, but you can't feel it through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can't feel it at all through 5 layers of cloth. So this person is going to be able to wear the kilt, sit on it, do everything else, and not feel this, the whole Princess and the Pea syndrome of feeling this lump that shouldn't be there, or this, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to carry on. Here's my, it's my 14th. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yes, that's my middle pleat. There's my 14th. On we go. So, And I also mention I make a point of sharpening, keeping an eye on how much my chalk is wearing, because a couple of pleats ago I stopped and I sharpened my chalk, because of course as the chalk lines get wider, the errors can start to compound. See that this one's a tiny bit off, so I gotta make sure there. Okay, let's get my needle out of the way. Double check here. Yeah, see, I'm gonna go well inside that chalk mark. Let's not have the chalk marks the least bit visible. Double checking with my gauge. You see once again how wonderfully convenient having these little wooden gauges are something. Sorry, I was distracted. I just heard I think I heard my cell phone buzz, so I might have a text. Okay. And you see that it's kind of, this crease isn't straight, is it? It's kind of bowing out. So drawing it a bit close and also tucking it in a bit. There. Yeah, there we go. And I don't know how somebody would have to be very skillful indeed if they were doing this with a sewing machine to be able to avoid those tiny little errors that we just saw. The fact that this crease has sort of taken upon itself to be slightly curved in that direction. I don't know. If someone was sewing the sewing machine, they'd be sewing from the back, and God knows how they would identify and prevent that from happening. Okay, I'm going to sign off again because there's really no point in watching me sew yet another seam. And I'll talk to you soon again once there's something interesting to report. From here, actually, having said that, from here, the various steps are going to be exactly as you've seen in innumerable other videos. And I should say it, take this point to mention, if I haven't done so already, the purpose of this repetition, you're seeing kilts being made from start to finish over and over again. There's two factors here. There's two reasons. One of them is a great many people like to see a documentary of their kilt being made. It adds to the satisfaction and the joy of having something made for you, that you can see the process and have it recorded so you can go back and look at it. But also because I'm passing my methods on to you, repetition is one of the principles of instruction, principles of learning. I'm going to have to go back and look up the actual lists. But if you see me do it a number of times, each time you're going to learn something. And perhaps there's going to be that one time you're going to see a detail that you missed previously. So there we go. I'm absolutely unapologetic about just publishing these vids over and over and over. Right, for those of you with motion sickness, close your eyes now.